Flamingo, which is Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood by Anish Jung. As the subtitle makes it clear to us, the plot revolves around children. In this video, we will deal with part 1 of the chapter in details. Discussing the title, Lost Spring, we understand that spring has been equated to childhood, as spring is the season when flowers bloom. In a similar manner, childhood is a stage of life where an individual blooms and grows. The author wants to show that these children have lost the most beautiful stage of their life. The subtitle emphasizes that these children have not lost their childhood, but it has been taken away from them by their parents and the society. This excerpt presents the horrific truth about the children in our country who are victims to child labor, and they're deprived from the right to bloom and grow. Talking about the author, Anish Young was born in Raulkela and she spent her childhood and adolescence in Hyderabad. She received her education in Hyderabad and in the United States of America. Her parents were both writers. Anish Young began her career as a writer in India. She has been an editor and columnist for major newspapers in India and abroad and has authored several books. The following is an excerpt from her book titled Lost Spring Stories of Stolen Childhood, which was published in the year 2005. In this book, she analyzes the grinding poverty and traditions which condemn these children to a life of exploitation. The story Lost Spring deals with the deplorable condition of poor children who get forced to miss the simple joyful moments of childhood because of the socio-economic condition. These children are not given the opportunity of schooling and are compelled to start working early in life. Anish Young has tried to highlight the plight of poor people and the children who are exploited either by their uneducated and poor, helpless parents and the society who employ them as child laborers. Let's now begin the explanation of the text. I will read and explain the important parts. The first part, sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage. Why do you do this? I ask Saheb, whom I encounter every morning, scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps of my neighbourhood. The author meets Saheb each day while he is scrounging for gold in the garbage dumps, which means he is looking for something valuable in the garbage dumps. Saheb left his home long ago. Set amidst the green fields of Dhaka, his home is not even a distant memory. There were many storms that swept away the fields and homes, his mother tells him. That's why they left, looking for gold in the big city where he now lives. The family of Saheb left Dhaka as many storms swept away their homes and green fields. They moved to the big city looking for a livelihood, which is valuable like gold. I have nothing else to do, he mutters, looking away. Go to school, I say glibly, realizing immediately how hollow the advice must sound. There is no school in my neighborhood. When they build one, I will go. If I start a school, will you come? I ask, half joking. Yes, he says, smiling broadly. A few days later, I see him running up to me. Is your school ready? It takes longer to build a school, I say, embarrassed at having made a promise that was not meant. But promises like mine are abound in every corner of his bleak world. The author Anish Jung advises Saheb to go to school rather than doing rag picking, but there is no school in his neighborhood. We see here that children like Saheb are deprived of education because of lack of proper infrastructure. After months of knowing him, I ask him his name. Saheb Alam, he announces. He does not know what it means. If he knew its meaning, Lord of the Universe, he would have a hard time believing it. Unaware of what his name represents, he roams the streets with his friends, an army of barefoot boys who appear like the morning birds and disappear at noon. Over the months, I have come to recognize each of them. The author here talks about Sahib's names, which is Sahib-e-Alam, and the meaning of his name is Lord of the Universe. Sahib's name is a complete contrast to his condition. His name means he should be the richest, but the reality is that he is a rag picker, roaming the streets with his barefooted friends, finding valuable things in garbage. Why aren't you wearing chappals? I ask one. My mother did not bring them down from the shelf, he answers simply. Even if she did, he will throw them off, adds another who is wearing shoes that do not match. When I comment on it, he shuffles his feet and says nothing. I want shoes, says a third boy who has never owned a pair all his life. Traveling across the country, I have seen children walking barefoot in cities on village roads. It is not lack of money, but a tradition to stay barefoot is one explanation. I wonder if this is only an excuse to explain away a perpetual state of poverty. In the lines that I just read, the author writes about an incident where children are barefoot. Though they want a pair of shoes, but their parents provide excuse for not wearing shoes, saying it's a tradition to remain barefoot. The writer feels that this is one of the excuses that parents offer to their children to hide their state of poverty. Moving on, I remember a story a man from UDP once told me. As a young boy, he would go to school past an old temple where his father was a priest. He would stop briefly at the temple and pray for a pair of shoes. 30 years later, I visited his town, and the temple, which was now drowned in an air of desolation. In the backyard where lives the new priest, there were red and white plastic chairs. A young boy dressed in a grey uniform, wearing socks and shoes, arrived panting and threw his school bag on a folding bed. Looking at the boy, I remembered the prayer another boy had made to the goddess when he had finally got a pair of shoes. Let me never lose them. The goddess had granted his prayer. Young boys like the son of the priest now wore shoes, but many others, like the rag pickers in my neighborhood, remain shoeless. The author remembers another incident that happened at UDP. A young boy prayed to have a pair of shoes, and God fulfilled his prayers. But not everyone's prayers are heard. some still remain shoeless like the rag pickers of Seemapuri. My acquaintance with the barefoot rag pickers leads me to Seemapuri, a place on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. Those who live here are squatters who came from Bangladesh back in 1971. Saheb's family is among them. Seemapuri was then a wilderness. It still is, but it is no longer empty. In structures of mud with roofs of tin and tarpaulin, devoid of sewage, drainage, or running water, live 10,000 rag pickers. The author peeps into the lives of the rag pickers of Seemapuri. Seemapuri is on the periphery of Delhi, yet miles away from it metaphorically. This line is very important for us to understand the condition of Seemapuri dwellers. Seemapuri is on the outskirts of Delhi, and Delhi is the national capital, and it enjoys every example of advancement. Yet, in the same city, there is a place where people are living in the most inhuman conditions. These rag pickers live in mud houses with roofs of tin and tarpaulin. There is no sewage, drainage, and they even lack drinking waters. And in such condition, there are 10,000 rag pickers living there. They have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity, without permits, but with ration cards that get their names on voters' lists and enable them to buy grain. Food is more important than survival, than an identity. If at the end of the day we can feed our families and go to bed without an aching stomach, we would rather live here than in the fields that gave us no grain. Say a group of women in tattered sari, where when I asked them why they left the beautiful land of green fields and rivers. Wherever they find food, they pitch their tents and that becomes transit homes. So these rat pickers have lived here for more than 30 years without an identity. They're not worried about identity as food is more important than having an identity. This is an appropriate example to show how thousands of people migrate from the rural parts of the country to the urban part in search of food, in search of a better life, in search of a livelihood, in search of a better future for the children. Children grow up in them, becoming partners in survival, and survival in Seemapuri means rag picking. Through the years, it has acquired the proportions of a fine art. Garbage to them is gold. It is the daily bread, a roof over their heads, even if it is a leaking roof. But for a child, it is even more. So, children in Seemapuri, they eventually become partners in survival because they too do rag picking and contribute to the family income. And because these rag pickers have been doing this task of rag picking for so many years, now they have it has become fine art for them. Garbage is gold to them. This means that this garbage is valuable because it's the means of their survival. It is food and clothes and shelter for them. I sometimes find a rupee, even a 10 rupee note. Saheb says, his eyes lightening up. When you can find a silver coin in a heap of garbage, you don't stop scrounging, for there is hope of finding more. It seems that for children, garbage has a meaning different from what it means to their parents. For the children, it is wrapped in wonder. For the elders, it is means of survival. So children in Seemapuri, these rag pickers, sometimes they find 10 rupee notes and they keep doing more and more for rag picking in search of more valuable things in the garbage that they get. Garbage has different meaning for the people of Seemapuri. It's different for the children and different for the parents. For children, it is wrapped in wonder, the hope that they may find something new. But for the elders, it's a means of their survival and not just a time pass which they do each day. One winter morning, I see Saheb standing by the fenced gate of the neighbourhood club, watching two young men dressed in white playing tennis. I like the game, he hums, content to watch it standing behind the fence. I go inside when no one is around, he admits. The gatekeeper lets me use the swing. The author finds a Saheb at the neighborhood club watching a game of tennis, and he is fascinated by the game. And he says that he enters the club when there's no one there because the gatekeeper allows him, and he also uses the swing. Saheb too is wearing tennis shoes that look strange over his discolored shirt and shorts. Someone gave them to me, he says, in the manner of an explanation. The fact that they're discarded shoes of some rich boy who perhaps refused to wear them because of a hole in one of them does not bother him. For one who has walked barefoot, even shoes with a hole is a dream come true. But the game he is watching so intently is out of his reach. The author finds Saheb wearing a pair of tennis shoes one day, and these are discarded shoes, yet Saheb is happy owning them because for these barefoot rag pickers, even shoes with a hole is precious. Though Saheb has acquired a pair of tennis shoes, but playing the game is still out of his reach. This morning, Saheb is on his way to the milk booth. In his hand is a steel canister. I now work in a tea stall down the road, he says, pointing in the distance. I am paid 800 rupees and all my meals. Does he like the job? I ask. His face, I see, has lost the carefree look. The steel canister seems heavier than the plastic bag he would carry so lightly over his shoulder. The bag was his, the canister belongs to the man who owns the tea shop. Saheb is no longer his own master. One morning, when the author finds Saheb carrying a steel canister, as he has started working in a tea stall where he is paid rupees 800 along with all his meals. Yet Saheb is unhappy, and the author feels that this unhappiness is because Saheb has lost his freedom. He can no more roam around with his friends doing rag picking. He now has to work under a master. He has lost his freedom. The steel canister is heavier because it is now his duty, whereas the plastic bag that he used for rag picking was lighter because it was his freedom. With that, we end the first part of the chapter here. In the next two videos, we will be discussing I want to drive a car, and in the third video, we'll be seeing the theme, title, and important questions from the chapter Law Spring.